We're doing a little bit of garden cleanup today. This is one of those things that, you know those days we have where everything goes bad and then we make it worse because we get mad about it? That happened to me the other day because everything in the kitchen was going bad. And then we had a little bit of this windstorm that came really fast and I didn't even hear anything, but I looked out and saw a lot of green on the ground on my back patio. And it's all of these jades flew off somehow of my plant stand. And can I just say, every year I put them here during the summer and they do fine. You can see they are top heavy, which that's my fault. But what we're gonna do today is start with a little bit of rehabbing these. I'm gonna then clean up some garlic and we're going to plant some garlic. It's kind of a whole bunch of tasks that I've been letting go. That garlic should have been cleaned up a long time ago, but we don't always have all the time, do we, to finish it? So as you can see what happened, wind came behind them here, threw them off of my plant rack. Now, obviously, these are been in the same pots for a while anyway, so this could have just been Mother Nature telling me it's time. And you know, there's a couple broken pieces. We'll talk about what we can do with those. Obviously, there's broken pots, and yes, we can have tears over the broken pots for a little bit, but eventually we just have to move on. And so that's what I'm gonna do today, is I'm gonna start moving on and we're going to just pot them up. Now it's really not that hard, but it's a great excuse to kind of go over some of these potting up basics. I mean, look how beautiful this plant is. It needs a little bit of love again. And you can see here some of the broken pieces. All these leaves, if we wanted to, these little ones that fall off, you could put these directly into soil. They will sprout new plants. That's where all these little baby plants come from. Like if you look down here, all these came off of new leaves that I just started growing. So jade are super easy. They can last for years. A lot of people have them from their grandparents, from their parents. For years and years, they way outlive us. So let's take these over, start kind of the potting and healing process. What we're doing is going back to my potting area, which is a mobile potting area because it's my gator. I just do everything on my gator pretty much because it's just really easy. So honestly, this is a good thing to do before I have to take everything in for the winter anyway, which is coming up here really soon. What I do like to do is always have my espoma soil right around. I use espoma soil for everything. The all-purpose potting soil is great for all my plants, including things like jade that you want to be a little water conscious on, especially when they're in the house. But the thing is, I like to put it in a big tub, like I have here, a big trug for outdoors. I find it super easy to throw the soil in, and then instead of making a mess everywhere, I'm just making a mess in the trug. Now, you guys, this is like you're coming over to my house unexpected. I'm not necessarily all prepared, but that's okay because we can make do. So what I like to do is have it here on the back because I can just easily lift and work. And what I'm gonna start by doing is taking one of these, and you can see, these are a little bit excessive, but I use pieces of pottery in the bottom. You can use, you know, things like hardware mesh too, to cover the hole. You always want good drainage in any container you're going to use. Make sure to have good drainage. So what I'm going to do is cover that hole. I'm going to take this, I think, let's start actually with this jade maybe. I like this one here first, maybe a little bit better. And what I want to do is break up just slightly some of these roots, and you can see it has a little piece of the pottery in it. But break them up just because they were getting really growing. Now, jade, you could keep sizing up containers. We could get bigger and bigger, but the thing is, I like to keep them contained and make them stay in smaller containers for a while because I don't want to get them out of hand. You can see they get big, they get trunk-like. So what I'm going to start by doing is putting a whole bunch of this nice soil down in here. I mean, it's good to give it a refresh, some fresh soil, kind of start the growth. So I'm going to put it down in, and I always check my depth. Now it's a little high. I like to put it no deeper than it currently was, so I'll take out just a little bit of that. And yes, I am filling it somewhat tight. I could size it up a container, but instead of doing that, I'm just gonna rough up these roots a bit more so they have some new room to grow around in. We call this root pruning, and by we, I mean me. And so what I'll do here is fit it back in here, ever so. And then what I'll do is start just putting in some new soil around it. Now, I'm trying to pick a somewhat sizable pot that has weight to it because I want these to feel sturdy once they're done. They're really top heavy. So I'm just gonna start tamping soil in all around it, making sure I get down in the cracks, and then we'll just do the other one. I'm finishing up on the second one, which I kind of like the fact that jade can get wonky, asymmetrical, big trunk-like stems. I kind of love that. And you can see really with the yellowing, this was needing to be repotted anyway. So like I said, nature decided to tell me in a little bit of an annoying way. That's okay, it got the work done. So now you can see I have 2 nicely potted jades. What I will say, any of these pieces that broke off during the fall or just fall off while you're planting them, you can just pot these up. You can just dry root it. You could either put it down into the pot with it, which we don't really need more plants in here. So these I'll just go put in another small pot, because why not become a crazy plant person? That's really how it happens. You start planting things, start having too many, and that's what happens. So these are ready to go. I'll water them well, which they'll need because that gets the air bubbles out from all that displaced soil. Also just make sure everything is saturated. You know, outdoor jades, they're so easy. And how I always tell indoor when you need to water them, you don't want to overwater them because they can be prone to rotting with overwatering. I feel the leaves, and if they feel slightly leathery, that's usually when they need water. So what we're gonna though work on now is a task I did not get to a long time ago. So I love to plant garlic. We're gonna plant some garlic here in a little bit. But before I can plant it, I need to get all my garlic ready to plant. So what that means is I have to finish cleaning it up. Now, I wanna show you all this garlic. So I have already cleaned up quite a bit, and let me grab it here so you can see it. Garlic is something that is so easy because I live in zone 5B, and in many zones this is the case where you plant it the year before. So I am planting garlic in the fall for harvest the following late June, early July, sometime in there. That to me makes it so easy because you're able to work ahead. You don't have to plant this next spring, it's just ready to grow. But you get it in the ground early so it has time to slowly start bringing out sprouts and getting roots set in so it has a head start next year. Now what you're gonna see in here are a mixture of some of the smaller heads and then some really nice big ones. So what you wanna do is always fish out and save the best ones to replant. Because if you continue to plant the biggest, most beautiful cloves of garlic, you'll continue to get bigger and better, beautiful garlic. That's just how it works. So what I have here are a few pieces left that I've been cleaning up. So what I always do is like this, usually I would do after I harvest it, I put it into cure. You let it fully dry. You see when all this is dry, you then cut it off. Now I could have done this probably late July, early August. I didn't get it done, so I'm doing it in the fall before I plant it. I cut down about 1 inch. This is hard neck garlic, and you can tell because it's very hard up here. So you have to use a good pruners or little secateurs here. And then I even make sure to cut that root end off. So I'm just cleaning it up. Think of like how you buy it at a grocery store, at a farmer's market. And then I will even sometimes take off some of the outer husk if it's dirty. But then you have a beautiful head of garlic that you can just store like you would if you bought it in a grocery store. So one question is, if you don't grow your own yet and you want to, can you just go buy it at a grocery store? It sounds easy enough, right? You technically can. There's no police that are gonna stop you from buying it and planting it. The thing is, it may not always be the best garlic for your area. Sometimes it's grown in other countries and brought in, sometimes it's growing in different climates. The best to do is find a good organic garlic that can grow in your area. So check at your farmer's market for someone selling garlic. They will most likely not care at all if you tell them what you're gonna do, and they'll talk to you about it, make sure you know about it, and then you'll know what kind of garlic you're planting, and that's for your area. You can also order it. Sometimes late in the season it gets sold out pretty quickly. Because guys, there's a resurgence on garlic, and I think everyone's in the mood to do it, so it sells out pretty quickly online. So I'm gonna clean up some of these, then we'll go and start planting. I have it all cleaned up, and now we're going around to the garden where I'm actually gonna plant the garlic, and we'll talk a little bit here about preparing the garden bed, which is not complicated. Now, the one thing I will say, I have large raised beds. I do have on my website a tutorial on how to make raised beds, the benefits of raised beds, the soil mix I like to use in them, kind of all the components. But you can see behind me 6 large beds. And I rotate 4 of them yearly that have one has tomatoes, one has peppers, one has cole crops, one has greens. Yearly those get rotated. The one behind me has rhubarb, and one beside it has asparagus. Those don't get rotated. So, because they're perennial. So here at the end of the rhubarb, half of it is for garlic. So I do like to refresh the soil somewhat every year just to kind of add some good nutrients to it, some organic matter. That's what I want to show you what I do just to prepare it. So right here's my garden bed. You can see it has some nice soil on it. It's pretty loose soil. I always like a mixture of 60% topsoil, 30% of a good organic compost, and then 10% of a lightener, which for me was perlite. And that's when I originally made these beds. Now every so often I'll add different things like compost from my compost pile or raised bed mix if I have to. But what I want to do this year, since it has usually leaves put on it, crushed up every fall after it comes up right before winter, I'll put on a layer of leaves just to protect it. But I am going to add on a few amendments if we shall. So I'm going to use first bulb tone, and the reason I'm using bulb tone is because guess what? Garlic is a bulb, and the great thing about this is even though it has flowers on it and it looks like it's only for tulips, daffodils, it works really well for garlic too. It has really good nutrients to help the bulb be promoted, have really good energy and feed the bulb. So that's really what I want to do here. So what we're going to do is start by adding some bulb tone, which you can also use just a good organic bone meal if you want to. That's also really good for it. But I'm going to just spread this lightly over everything. And then what I want to do here is add a little bit. My compost pile is depleted this year. It's in a moment of needing to refresh. So I have some just good organic chicken manure. It's fully composted. It's not actual manure. You can see it does not smell like chicken manure. It just smells like earthy, which is fine. So what I'm going to do is put on a couple bags of this too. So what I like to think about this is just adding some good organic matter to these beds. And that's what you want to do, is just to build that soil, have really healthy soil. That's really going to help you have healthy plants, in this case, healthy garlic. And when you use an organic product like this, you're not worried about putting synthetics on that could burn it or not be the correct thing. It's all going to work for it. So what I want to do then is just lightly rake it in, which you can see my soil is nice and light, very easily raked around. And this is just going to make sure, for one, that it doesn't blow away because it can get windy. I don't want the finer stuff on top to actually just blow around. Instead, I want it to make sure it works in just to the top couple inches. I'm not tilling the soil. I'm more just making sure this is spread around in the top couple inches, which you can see there's a little bit of debris from the leaves I put on last year, and that's fine because I'm going to be putting more on this year like I always do. And so now I'm ready pretty much just to plant. Now, if you see big pieces of soil, I'll kind of just break it up lightly with my rake, but it's nothing, there's no science to it. We're just making sure we add that organic matter back in. It's like feeding, just like we feed ourselves sometimes, certain things, certain nutrients. We're doing the same thing here for our bulbs. So what I want to do now is just be ready to plant. So I'm going to just smooth out the soil lightly. This is why I like raised beds. They're always 4 foot across, so I can easily reach from usually both sides. And what's nice is, so my mom's raised beds, I made thicker, so they're even like a nice seat on there for her. And that would be nice too, and you can make them as high as you want. So in an area here I have ready to go, we have all the garlic we cleaned up. So what I go in and do is look for the best, largest heads. Because, you know, in the kitchen, it's all garlic. But if you want to grow the best stuff, you start with the biggest. So what I do is I just go in and take it apart piece by piece. You know, a rookie mistake that's easy to do is to not know, do you just plant this whole bulb? No. Each clove creates a bulb of garlic. So we separate it first. And we take out, now I keep the husk on it. If there's a little bit of extra husk like this and it blows off, that's fine. But any of those individual pieces, I just take apart. And you can see it's pretty easy. And that little root end, sometimes even I just break off so it's exposed. This is where the roots are going to come out. The point is where it's going to sprout a new green sprout. So all you have to do now is start planting it. Now, usually I'll go through and have a whole bunch of this broken open, but I'll just show you here on a few right away. That I'll sometimes make a rough row, meaning with my hand, not perfect. You can sometimes take, some people like to take your rake or something, draw it across, and then you get a pretty straight one. And then you can just start planting. So it's about 4 inches deep because it ends up being about 6 inches when I put on my leaves at the end. So I like to push it down in, and you can see that point is down there. That's the bottom of it, is at about that 4-inch mark. And then I keep going. And you want to space them, you know, it's about that 4 inches up to 6 inches, depending on the type of garlic. It kind of depends, and you know, what I think of, take a head of garlic if you have one, and set it where it's going. That's about how big they're going to get. So you want to make sure they're spaced so each one can grow. It's that simple. And you can see the soil is light enough that I'm just able to stick it down in and then keep going. And no, I'm not measuring to make it perfect because you know what? You don't have to. It will work and it will grow and it will sprout. So I'm gonna keep planting a few rows and you're gonna see how easy garlic is. In no time, I call it no time, it takes time, I planted, I think around 80 cloves of garlic. Now I know, because I always do, I'm gonna get some questions of like, what do you do with all that garlic? Remember, I make a lot of food. I recipe test a lot of food for the recipes I create. I'm cooking all the time, making food on videos. I also share it with my mom. So I actually do go through more garlic than you realize. But then you also have to think, I'm using a good chunk, a decent amount of heads to then plant garlic for the next year. So I definitely plant an overabundance of garlic just for that purpose. So all I do at the end here is smooth over that soil to just make sure all those holes that I created where I planted it are covered. Now, the big question I usually get and I forget to go over is watering. If we have a dry fall, which we've been in a drought now pretty much from 2022, 2023, so unless fall really turns things around and we don't have a drought, I will probably water this a couple times. I'll hold off watering it here right away. I'll probably water it in about a week maybe. And then I'll water it a couple times a month until the ground starts to freeze, which could be up until December. So only a few months maybe of watering a few times. You know, until it sets roots, it doesn't need a lot of watering. So right now there are no roots going on. So I don't necessarily like to water a lot because that can cause rotting before the roots are set. Once the roots are going, I start seeing little green tips come out, which should happen in a few weeks. Then that's more of a, no, it's time to start watering maybe every other week. So a couple times a month, like I said. Then once I have the leaves fall off the trees here and I start picking them up with the lawnmower and shredding them, I put a nice layer of leaves on this with those greens, and then that just adds protection, but it also composts back down into the soil. I don't ever remove them, and you can see you don't even see them anymore. So that's what I'll do. It's really easy to plant garlic. I would honestly say it's pretty addictive because once you start, it's just an ongoing cyclical process, and it's nice to have something in the autumn like now when you're not really planting too much in the rest of the garden, especially in my zone 5B. It's nice to have something you plant and know you're going to have something next year. So you already are thinking ahead, getting that hope for the next year and knowing something is going to grow. I hope that inspires you or at least excites you to think about something different. And I know a big one is, can you grow garlic in containers? Yes, you can. The big thing is you want a nice sized container. You're gonna have to water it more because containers dry out quickly. So all through the growing season, all that. But also, even in the middle of winter, if it warms up a little bit outside, you're gonna wanna give that container some water because it will warm up and activate those roots much quicker than even a raised bed that's at soil level like this. And you're gonna wanna put a container in a really protected area. So just something to think about, but anything is possible. Anything is possible, and gardening comes in all shapes and sizes and can work for each of us. So I hope you see that sometimes we have to pivot, plant plants when we're not expecting to because they blow over in the wind. And sometimes it's just nice to get out there and plant something for next year, already thinking ahead. So until next time, I hope you have some exciting garden plans. If not, just dream about the future. Dream about next year if you have to. Maybe this year was a bust. That's okay. Next garden season is always a brand new start.